Tonight, we're stepping into shadows that stretch across centuries. A journey through moments when humanity faced its darkest hours, when survival wasn't guaranteed and comfort was a luxury few could afford. We're exploring the brutal realities that shaped our ancestors, the harsh truths that history books often gloss over with romantic tales of knights and castles. Before we dive deeper into this world of hardship and resilience, take a moment to settle in. Maybe grab a warm drink, dim those lights, and let the gentle hum of your surroundings carry you along. And if you find yourself drawn into these stories of struggle and survival, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment too and tell me where you're listening from tonight. There's something fascinating about connecting with fellow history enthusiasts from around the globe. Now, let's begin our descent into a time when every sunrise brought new challenges, when the simple act of waking up was already a victory against the odds. Picture this. You've just opened your eyes in the year 1325. Congratulations, you're breathing. That's genuinely an achievement worth celebrating because, in medieval Europe, making it through the night wasn't a given. Your bed isn't the comfortable sanctuary you know today. Instead, you're lying on a straw mattress that's seen better decades, stuffed with whatever organic matter was available, probably crawling with insects that consider you their breakfast buffet. There's no Egyptian cotton here, no memory foam, no pillows that cradle your head just right. Your blanket is a rough wool creation that hasn't seen water since the previous winter, now so heavy with accumulated dirt and grime that it feels like you're sleeping under a small boulder. The smell rising from this makeshift bedding is a symphony of barnyard aromas, human sweat, and something unidentifiable that you desperately hope isn't what you think it is. As consciousness fully returns, you hear the church bell echoing across the village. This isn't a gentle wake-up call. It's medieval Europe's version of an alarm clock, designed to be heard over the sounds of daily survival. And it shows no mercy to those who'd prefer a few more minutes of rest. Your home surrounds you in all its one-room glory. There are no windows to speak of, just openings covered with cloth if you're fortunate. The floor beneath you is packed earth, and the walls are wooden planks with gaps wide enough that you can feel the morning breeze cutting through them like nature's own air conditioning system. Except it only has one setting: uncomfortably cold. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. Your entire family shares this space, along with any livestock lucky enough to have shelter, and a thriving community of domestic insects who've made themselves quite at home. The aromatic blend filling the air includes stale beer, human bodies that haven't seen soap in months, goat, and various other scents that create what medieval people might have called atmosphere, but what we'd recognize as biological warfare. Your joints protest as you attempt to stretch. At 22 years old, you're practically middle-aged by medieval standards. Your spine creaks like old wooden floorboards, and your knees sound like someone shaking a bag of gravel. The simple act of getting out of bed becomes a calculated risk because the floor might be wet from rain that's leaked through the thatched roof, or crusty from whatever the neighbor's chicken decided to leave behind during its midnight wandering. This is morning in medieval Europe, where solitude is impossible because you share your living space with parasites, rodents, family members, and whoever else happened to need shelter for the night. Welcome to a world where your day begins not with possibility, but with the basic challenge of survival. Having successfully extracted yourself from your medieval bed of horrors, you now face the morning's next adventure. Nature is calling, and it's not asking politely. This is where you'll truly begin to appreciate the miracle of modern plumbing, because in the 14th century, answering nature's call was less private bathroom break and more public spectacle. There's no toilet as you know it. No seat, no handle, no little paper rolls waiting patiently for their moment of usefulness. Instead, you have a wooden bucket that serves the entire household, which is already approaching capacity because Uncle Wolfgang had an unfortunate encounter with yesterday's turnip stew. The smell emanating from this container could probably be classified as a weapon by today's standards. The disposal method is elegantly simple and thoroughly disgusting. You take your bucket to the nearest window and heave its contents into the street below. There's supposed to be a warning shout, something in Old French that roughly translates to "watch out below." But honestly, people rarely move fast enough to avoid the incoming projectiles anyway. Medieval streets aren't the charming cobblestone pathways you see in movies. They're open sewers, flowing rivers of human waste, animal droppings, and mysterious liquids that are probably best left unidentified. If you're living in a town with public latrines, congratulations. You get to sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers in a communal outhouse where privacy is mythology and ventilation is whatever breeze happens to wander through the cracks. Toilet paper hasn't been invented yet, so people make do with whatever's available. Straw, leaves, old rags, moss, or if they're feeling particularly luxurious, a scrap of wool, sometimes nothing at all, which might explain why handshakes weren't exactly popular social customs yet. If you're fortunate enough to live in a castle, surely the situation improves, right? Well, marginally. You might have access to a garderobe, which is essentially a hole in the wall that drops waste directly into the moat below. It sounds convenient until you realize that enemies sometimes use these waste chutes as unconventional entry points during sieges. Nothing quite like having your fortress infiltrated through the bathroom. Whether you're a peasant or nobility, medieval toilet practices are humiliating, cold, public, dangerous, and perpetually disgusting. One wrong step on a wet stone path, and you're face first in humanity's collective leftovers. And you still haven't addressed the morning dental hygiene situation. But we'll get to that particular nightmare shortly. After surviving the bathroom ordeal, you might think you deserve some kind of reward. Perhaps a nice breakfast to start the day right. Something warm, nourishing, comforting. Unfortunately, this is medieval Europe, where comfort is about as common as unicorns, and considerably less magical. Breakfast, if you can dignify it with that term, is a grim affair that makes prison food look appealing. There are no scrambled eggs, no coffee brewing in the corner, and definitely no fresh pastries waiting to brighten your morning. Instead, you squat near whatever fire you can manage to keep burning and stare into a wooden bowl containing something that looks like it was scraped off a muddy boot after a particularly unpleasant journey. Meet your daily serving of pottage, a thick, gloppy concoction made from whatever edible items you can scrounge together. Grains, root vegetables, maybe a few beans if fortune has smiled upon you recently. This mixture has been simmering in the same pot for days, possibly weeks, with new ingredients simply dumped on top of whatever's already decomposing at the bottom. It's less cooking and more like maintaining an ongoing edible science experiment. Alongside this delightful stew sits a chunk of bread so hard it could probably deflect arrows in a pinch. Made from coarse rye or barley flour, often supplemented with sawdust, ground acorns, or other creative additives because wheat is reserved for people who can actually afford food. This bread isn't your friend. You don't slice it so much as negotiate with it, possibly using tools typically reserved for construction projects. Your morning beverage selection is equally uninspiring. You're not sipping fresh orange juice or enjoying a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Instead, you're drinking beer. Yes, beer, at 6 in the morning. Before you start thinking medieval people were just committed to having a good time, understand that this wasn't by choice. The local water supply is teeming with parasites, bacteria, and various microscopic creatures that would love nothing more than to make your intestines their new vacation home. So you start your day with weak ale, low in alcohol but high in survivability. Even children drink this stuff because the alternative is potentially fatal. Nobody's particularly thrilled about beginning their morning with fermented beverages, but it beats dying from whatever's lurking in the nearest stream, hoping for some meat or cheese to round out this feast. Keep dreaming. Those luxuries are reserved for Sundays, saints' feast days, and only if your local lord is feeling unusually generous. Most peasants encounter meat maybe a handful of times per year, and fresh fruit only appears when it's in season and hasn't already been converted into wine. Don't even consider spices unless you happen to be royalty. A pinch of pepper costs more than most people earn in a month. Salt is so valuable, it's literally locked away like treasure. So you chew your gritty bread, gulp your morning beer, and try not to think about whatever might have nibbled on your breakfast while you were sleeping. This meal doesn't energize you for the day ahead. It simply happens to you, providing just enough sustenance to keep you functional for the back-breaking labor that awaits. And speaking of labor, now that you're properly underfed, it's time to get dressed for work, assuming you can call what passes for clothing in medieval times actual attire. Your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit. Not one favorite outfit among many options, but literally one set of clothes that you wear every single day for months, possibly years. There's no concept of seasonal fashion, no changing into something more comfortable after work. You wear this collection of fabric until it either disintegrates completely or develops its own ecosystem of fungal infections. Your outfit is typically a rough wool tunic or linen shift that's accumulated enough grime to qualify as armor. Underwear is optional, and if you're not fortunate enough to have a linen undertunic, you're essentially going commando beneath the layers of scratchy, sweaty wool that was lovingly stitched together by someone who may not have fully grasped the concept of proper seaming. There's no washing machine humming in the corner, no soap waiting by the basin, and absolutely no dry cleaner anywhere on the continent. Your clothes are stained, stiff, and fragrant in ways that would clear modern rooms. Even if you wanted to wash them, it's a monumental undertaking. You'd need to haul water from whatever source is available, heat it over a fire, scrub your garments against a board using ashes or lye, then hang everything to dry in the sun, which makes an appearance roughly 3 days per year. Footwear, if you're lucky enough to own any, consists of untreated leather barely held together with whatever stitching materials were available. These primitive shoes offer about as much arch support as wet cardboard and provide no protection against the medieval obstacle course of mud, animal waste, sharp rocks, and various biological hazards that carpet every surface you'll walk on. Most peasants simply go barefoot, navigating through a world that seems designed to inflict maximum discomfort on unprotected feet. Your skin becomes a battleground where fleas, lice, and bedbugs have established permanent residence. Everyone has them. Nobles scratch alongside peasants, monks alongside children, creating a universal itching experience that transcends social class. You'll find yourself scratching constantly, your skin raw from rubbing, your scalp a battlefield of bites and irritation. If you develop a rash, there's no dermatologist to consult, no cream to apply, no one to tell you whether it's scabies or just another medieval skin adventure. You simply endure it, along with every other physical discomfort that medieval life throws at you. Now that you're dressed in layers of misery and wrapped in aromatic discomfort, it's time to face the world with whatever smile you can manage. Except smiling in the Middle Ages is a risky proposition, not because of social conventions, but because of what's happening inside your mouth. There's no toothbrush waiting by your bedside, no minty paste to freshen your breath, no floss to remove yesterday's mystery meal from between your teeth. The concept of oral hygiene is about as popular as voluntary surgery, which is to say, not at all. Some people might chew on a twig or rinse with wine or vinegar, but for the most part, your teeth are engaged in a losing battle against time, decay, and whatever passes for food in medieval Europe. By the time you reach your mid-20s, your smile resembles something that might be displayed in a haunted house for maximum terror effect. Cavities are standard equipment, gums are swollen and angry, and those dark spots on your teeth aren't just food stains. That's genuine decay, rot that's established permanent residence in your mouth. Toothaches become your constant companion, a throbbing reminder that pain management consists of prayer, alcohol, or the nuclear option of pulling the offending tooth out yourself with whatever metal implement you can find. And this isn't hyperbole. That was the actual treatment. Dentists haven't been invented yet, but barber surgeons have, and yes, the same person who trims your hair is also responsible for yanking out your molars by candlelight, using an iron hook and absolutely zero pain relief. An infected tooth isn't just uncomfortable. It's potentially fatal. Without antibiotics, what we'd treat with a simple prescription today can easily develop into sepsis and kill you. That's right. You could literally die from a toothache, the same minor inconvenience that sends modern people to the pharmacy for some over-the-counter relief. Bad breath isn't just common, it's universal. If you're hoping to find romance in medieval times, your charm better be extraordinary, because your oral situation certainly won't be winning any hearts. Marriage negotiations focus on land ownership and livestock rather than personal hygiene anyway. Your mouth has become a biological disaster zone, and it's losing the war against time, bacteria, and medieval nutrition. But now that you've acknowledged the dental nightmare, it's time to head outside where your real work begins. The kind of labor that will test every bone in your body and remind you why life expectancy hovers around 35 years. Your job, if you're among the 90% of the population living as peasants, is elegantly simple in concept and brutally punishing in execution. Don't die while working yourself to death for someone else's benefit. You labor on land that belongs to a lord who probably couldn't pick you out of a lineup, rising with the sun and collapsing only when darkness makes continued work impossible. Your tools are primitive at best. A wooden hoe that's seen better decades, a rusty sickle that's more tetanus risk than farming implement, and whatever bones in your body haven't yet given up entirely. There's no weekend, no sick days, no vacation time. You work sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week, with Sunday off only if you're not harvesting, fighting off raiders or desperately trying to prevent your infected wounds from turning gangrenous. The physical demands are staggering. Fields get plowed by hand or with oxen if you're wealthy enough to afford such luxury. You dig ditches until your spine begins to resemble a question mark, plant seeds until your knees surrender, pull weeds until your back screams for mercy, and carry water until you question every life decision that brought you to this moment. If you're a woman, congratulations. Your workload just doubled. In addition to field labor, you're responsible for child care, cooking, cleaning, spinning wool, feeding animals, and pretending your husband's lice infestation isn't slowly migrating to your side of the bed. Children start contributing around age 5, not because child labor laws haven't been written yet, but because survival requires every available hand. Break a bone? Too bad. Develop a fever? Drink some warm beer and keep working. Get injured? Apply some mud and pray it doesn't get infected. You can't afford to stop working, not even for a day, because if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you don't eat, medieval Europe has a simple solution for that problem. Someone else takes your place. Through all of this, the weather provides its own special brand of torture. Winter means no insulation, no heating, just wooden walls with gaps wide enough to throw livestock through. Summer transforms your shelter into a clay oven where you sweat through your only set of clothes, while flies treat you like an all-you-can-eat buffet, Medieval medicine steps in when you finally succumb to injury or illness, and it's about as helpful as you'd expect from a time when people believed disease came from bad air and moral failings. Everything wrong with you gets attributed to your bodily humors being out of balance. Got a fever? Obviously, too much blood. The solution? Let's drain some out using a dull blade or hungry leeches. Feeling anxious? Clearly an excess of black bile. Time for laxatives and prayers while everyone starts measuring you for a coffin. Surgery happens with tools that haven't been cleaned since the Crusades. Heated over fire, not for sterilization, but because they look more intimidating that way. There's no anesthesia unless you count passing out from agony. If you somehow survive the cure, everyone assumes God took pity on you while the doctor takes full credit. And so your days continue in this endless cycle of survival, each sunrise bringing fresh challenges, each sunset a small victory against overwhelming odds. You work, you suffer, you endure. And if you're extraordinarily lucky, you might live long enough to see your children face the same struggles you've endured. But here's what's remarkable about this brutal existence. Through all the pain, the hardship, the constant threat of death, people still found ways to laugh, to love, to create meaning in their lives. They told stories, sang songs, celebrated what little they had, and somehow maintained hope despite living in conditions that would break most modern spirits within days. They built communities, formed friendships, fell in love, and raised families against impossible odds. They developed art, literature, and innovations that would eventually lead to the comfortable world we inhabit today. Their resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship became the foundation upon which civilization continued to build. So tonight, as you settle into your comfortable bed with clean sheets, indoor plumbing just steps away, and medicine available at the nearest pharmacy, take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary luxury of your existence. The simple act of flipping a switch for light, turning a handle for clean water, or taking a pill for pain relief represents comforts that would have seemed like magic to our medieval ancestors. Their struggles, their endurance, their refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming adversity, paved the way for every convenience you now take for granted. Sleep well, knowing that the brutal history that shaped our world has given way to possibilities they could never have imagined, and that their legacy lives on in the civilization we continue to build upon their foundation of remarkable human resilience.